So, one of the things I find most enjoyable about Revit is its ability to make decent renderings rather expeditiously. So here we're just looking at it in a shaded view. Some of the things that turn out, I'm going to go back to how a 3D view sort of typically looks when you first load it up. You typically won't have any shadows on. 3D views can't use the depth queuing, so the ambient, even though it's not even on, is going to usually be at 0 when you first turn it on, and there won't be a background. So let's see the difference. So this is sort of your initial 3D view, and actually they'll have the crop region also shown. So that's this box here. The crop region sort of gives you an idea of where the view is being cropped. So I just took it down a bit. I can change, grab these control points here and stretch it in one way or the other. When I'm doing renderings, I like to turn those off so it kind of bleeds into the distance. This tree, you can see how it's sort of transparent while the other planting objects are not. If I was leaving this in the shaded view, sometimes I'd turn on the transparency. So I'd right click, override graphic standards by element. You can do it by category, so if I did it by category, change all the plantings, and then I could do a filter where I could choose specifically, but I just want this one because it's in the foreground, so I'll bump its surface transparency up significantly. I'll say OK to that. This is the look I think we're going for. So let's try to boost it up a little bit more. So one of the things, I don't know if you've played with the older versions, they've added in this internal geometry, or not internal geometry, internal reference point. That's this UAC, this north, south, X, Y, Z, whatever you want to call them, arrows there. I'm going to hit VG for visibility graphics. I'm going to scroll down to site, hit the plus, and turn off the internal. It doesn't really add to this, and it doesn't print, it doesn't show. It's really just sort of in the way of our graphic view of this plan. So let's start doing a few things to boost it up a bit. Let's start quite simply just turning on the shadow. I'm just going to hit apply, and you'll see it's taking the shadow with the sun coming from the upper left shining to the lower right. You can go into your lighting settings here. So let's see sunlight from the top left, and you can change where it's coming from. First thing I want to do is change its grade plane because I set a grade which is separate than the first floor. So I'm going to say the grade is there, and you'll notice just ever so slightly the shadow shifted. So I was saying before that the first level, which is 6 inches up here, was grade, which means that my shadows were ending on there. So if you look right here under the car, I'm going to change it back to level 1. See, it sort of shifted up. I'm going to go back to grade, shift it down so it matched the grade. And I want to turn on let's turn on some color, because I want to show you, let's go consistent color. The windows, pay attention to them as we start playing with a few things. So one of the things, the shadows usually come in at 50. That's harsh. I usually like to be in the 15 to 25 range. So we'll hit apply. Okay, you'll notice they got softer. They're not so hard. I still want to bump it up a little bit. Let's go to 20. It's not a huge difference, but trust me, it just does feel a little different. So I'm going to hit the show ambient shadow. Now pay attention to the glass in the door, in the glass door, and the windows when I turn that on. So we'll click that, we'll click apply, and it adds these other shadows and reflections and things that are more ambient, so that if you, even the bushes here, it's going to render differently, but it's a little softer. it has these shadows that are cast by the items themselves. And then I'm going to bump that up a bit too. Hit OK. Now the background currently is a blank white. Depending on what your page is going to look like, that may work. But this one is going to be for someone to use in a presentation. So let me close the lighting. I'm going to come down to background. Let's just run through them. Sky, I'm going to turn that on. I've never been a huge fan of it. It's got this cartoony feel about it. Yeah, so I'm not a big fan of that. Let's go to, one of the ones that's kind of cool is you can use an image now. So if you want to go through the effort of lining up the rendering in an image of the site that you might have, you can do that. I would recommend, if you did do that, that you try to take the picture somewhere in that 35 to 70 millimeter range. Note the date and time, because if you're using a real survey and locations and you've tagged the location in the model, you can set the lighting to actually be the same as it should be on that exact day, on that exact time. So what you would do there is go to lighting, go here, and you choose still, and you can put in your location, date, time that it's supposed to be in. So let's go back and let's cancel that. So it is where it was. What I like to use though, especially in more of a, this isn't a realistic view, I'll go to gradient, leave the colors as they are, hit OK. Yeah, now that it gives a nice soft gradient here. My ground is sort of going off. One of the things you'll notice is this band here, that's your ground cover or ground color. My site, I don't have it stretching far, so the ground that it is visible, sort of that grade plane that's been named as a ground plane, goes and is visible out to the horizon, which is this line. We can try to adjust that with just seeing how we look at this. No, I'm not a big fan of what this is. Let's rewind one. Oops. Yeah, we'll leave that like that for now. I want to change back to go through some of the options in the type of view. We can start with the detail levels. You may have noticed coarse, medium, fine before, but when you're in a 3D view, it can actually really change the look of certain things. I'm going to go to coarse. Notice that the steel that was here is now just a line. The doors, if we zoom in, there's no hardware. With the AutoCAD typical ones, you'll really notice it. So I'm going to bump this up to medium, and you'll notice the difference in the steel here. I haven't dealt with the connection corner here, so it is what it is. Let me see if I can just stretch that end a little more just to give it something. Yeah, so this was a really quick sketch put together, so there's a lot of inconsistencies and incongruencies. Like, we're not going to talk about whatever these tilts, these windows here. I know they're quite wrong, but who knows? Oh, they're even on the wrong side of the wall. And they're facing the wrong, yeah. Well, like I said, there they are. But let's pay attention to the doors again. I'm going to bump this up from medium to fine. Just my saving interval. Okay. So these doors don't really show, but you might have noticed that the pane, the paneling has changed from a simple line, so we're going to go back again. Of course, a simple line, single black line, to now you can see sort of all the mullions that are in there. So if we go to the double hung up here, you notice that again, go to the high level, it changes. The shadows actually get really funky in the lowest coarse setting, but when you go up to fine, it really matches to the item that's there. Now this is, again, I could go and show you the site plan on how wrong this building is, but it gives them something just to throw in the presentation. Now, I do want to go to the View tab and show off another couple set of things. Actually, let's go through what I meant to originally. So you've got your different view styles. Next to your detail level, there's the View Styles option. You can click that, and they're really the 6 that are your out-of-the-box, typical, ready to go, show you something. On site plans especially, I like to sometimes switch to wireframe so I can capture things that are under the roof line that you won't be able to see otherwise, but no, here it's just too messy. The stairs, the doors, the windows, you can't see anything. So hidden line, again, that was the one. This doesn't show color. It gives some idea of materials. This is what I'll probably end up using on this project just because we're such a preliminary phase on it. You've got the shaded, which gives you sort of a flat shaded color of whatever it is you're using. Consistent color. This is a very consistent, so like this red is really consistent, and this is the same color here as it is here. Where let's go back to shaded, and you'll notice it's based on where the light's coming from. That this looks more cream, and this has like this gray, but they're the same material, but the light's coming from up here, shining down here, so it's just like, oh, that's shaded, it's different than this. Realistic is sort of one step down from the rendered view. It gives you a quick view, especially when you're looking at planting. So you might have noticed the plants change from generic things to now they're got a little texture to them. And I can see, if they're even on the right layer, which it doesn't look like, not layer, the right level, which it does not look like they are. So I'm going to take this and bring it down to gray, make sure they're met. Yeah, I think that's a little better. So we have these boxwoods, they look like boxwoods. Now this one's probably going to mess up my computer, but I'm going to change it to ray trace. Now I'm starting to calculate how all the lighting affects the different materials on here. So the glass is versus the sun coming in. There you go. You'll notice my car, all the outlines of the polygons are gone. The materials are really starting to use the bump maps that come with them, so you can almost see the bumps and the edges and the siding, and the brick is sort of popping out in these little areas. This is sort of, like I said, one step away from rendering, because what I can do is I could still grab my my flywheel and change the view from here, but I'm not going to. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to hidden line, because this is, like I said, what I think I'm going to render out or send out. I'm going to go to File, Export, and if you click here on this, or just hold your mouse over it, apparently, you'll be able to come down to Images. I'm just going to save that image. That's going to be my third one for the day. You may want to change around some of the settings. I use a lossless. 2000 pixels is 9 times out of 10 more than you'll need. And then what I want to do is go up to the view on the ribbon, and I'm going to click on render, and I'm going to render that high. Let's see what happens. And you'll notice it's taking a while. This is one of my materials is missing, but it's bump pattern. but it's still coming out pretty decent. My plantings are looking like plantings. This tree, which I had set to a lower standard, is now actually a tree. The car is a car, the door is a door. You can almost see some sort of hinging happening. There's no hardware on this door. The typical AutoCAD doors do have hardware, so you can keep that in mind. But it's kind of taking on life. It's starting to look like something. I'm actually going to stop this because what I want to do is add material to that. I think I'm going to leave that. No, I'm going to add a material to that address. So let's cancel. Let's grab those numbers. Let's go to material. I might want something black. You know what? Let's just type in black and see what pops up. You know, if this was, depending on what this project was at this point, we could have a lot more conversation about choosing the right types of materials. When you are in the material browser, you might not have noticed, or maybe you did, there's the physical and the thermal over here. So those really come useful when you're doing energy modeling and you tell it to use the components of the model. I'm just gonna, oh, what did I do? Apparently typed black twice. I'm gonna choose this rendered matte solid black and hit OK. So that when I go to view, these are your multiple rendering types. You've got the render, this is rendering on your computer. Rendering cloud, this is going to use the Autodesk servers to render it. If the models start getting more complex, their processes are significantly faster than you leaving your computer all on night to try to get a rendering that you're not even sure you're going to like. The other side of that is that you will have to spend some of your cloud credits to use it. And then you've got a render gallery which opens up sort of all the renderings in this project, completed and in progress. So those are the ones that are in the cloud, but you can see them all. I'm going to do the render here again because it's not that big. We'll leave it all the settings that we had set. You actually have some exposure options if you want to change how light or dark the image looks, and it's almost like working with a real camera, so you might be able to match it to the settings if you're rendering in the background or that you plan on photoshopping this into. It just gives you an extra layer of customability there. Okay, so this rendering, we're just going to let it run for a minute. Like, you might have noticed now that 98's popping out a bit more, and I know this model because this was one before I really got a grasp on Revit. The floor for the front deck is supposed to be that's an interior oak floor, so you notice it's like highly shellacked, it's highly glossy. Your front porch, if it's wood, is probably nowhere near that level of finish or that glossy a finish. It's typically a much duller if they're wood. So that's something we're going to have to come back and revisit. But again, this is just for a quick presentation. You know, this model is almost what you see is what you get. We're at 2 minutes and only halfway through rendering. If this model was more complex, it would be worth looking at the Autodesk Cloud rendering, just so you can come up with something faster, sooner, sort of surprise your client in a preliminary phase to show them this level of work. Yeah, I'm just looking at this, I see so many things that could be done better, but It is what it is. I think one of my colleagues recently gave me some great advice, which is walk away, come back, look at it, and be like, okay, was it worth me putting more into this? And at this point, this one it's not. So this will do for now until we even get an okay. This is the direction we want to go. Let's see, 86%, we're almost there. 90, so it's rendering is a slow process. It's really, especially calculating the lights, the reflectiveness of materials. Like you can even see the reflection of the door in that interior wood floor. Okay, so this is done. Before you close, figure out what you're doing with this image. You can save it to the project, which I'm going to do. I'm going to let the name stand. Or you can export, or both, as I'm doing. I'm going to give this a number. And yeah, now, because as soon as you close it, it's going back to what that view was. And that's why I saved it in the model. So we come down here, and we've got some renderings already. That's the one we just did. This is definitely an older version of the project. But there, that could be your rendering. So what did that take us? 20 minutes to just go through a tutorial on what all of them are, and then I guess it was more like 3 or 4 minutes to actually render. I'd say that's not bad. And there are a lot of other rendering agents you can use. I don't do a lot of renderings. I think if I do one a quarter, then that's a high number for me. So I'm not at a point where I think it's worth paying for a separate rendering software. This is good enough. If I start picking up some more where I've got to go to planning boards, I usually end up even sending those out to a professional renderer. But like I said, this will do for my client's current needs.